Hey guys, I am back with Taylor. Taylor was on and has our number one most listened to podcast, Sit Down Into It. It was very magical. I even got fan mail. Did I tell you about the fan
You
mail?
did. I'm so excited.
I got fan mail. We got fan mail. Today, I think we're talking more about the inner child, but who knows what will come up. And we just started to talk, and I was like, we have to hit record immediately. So let's back this up for a second.
Yeah.
We were talking about how to build a sex room on Netflix. And one of the episodes, I want to say 4 or 5 in, has a poly family because it's a family and there's 7 of them. And I was telling Taylor, it's really hilarious the way they set up the poly conversation because there's like a man and a woman and they're like, we're real different. We should tell you we're real different. We were married, but now we're divorced and we're still seeing each other. And she's like, oh, okay. Then they're like, oh, yeah. And there's 7 of us. We're poly, we're family. And every weekend, the family comes together for family weekend and they are together. And then the lady on the show that hosts the show is like, oh, okay. And then she's like, and it gets more interesting. I really like to pee on people. So the lady's like, oh my God, we're going to build you the most awesome sex room and it's going to have a giant shower with a drain. You can do whatever you want with your fluids. And then we started to talk about what is poly.
Yeah.
So dive into that.
Yeah. So we're talking about us having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and we're talking about just because people are poly doesn't mean that they're in the BDSM lifestyle. And really looking at that and kind of looking at where I'm at, like in my own personal relationships. I was like, I don't want to have sex with people outside of a relationship, but a relationship to me doesn't mean like, oh, we're going to be together forever and we're going to get married and do all these things. A relationship to me is like a really safe container.
Yeah.
That has like, I've got a baseline, and that baseline is, integrity and honesty and trust and taking care of yourself and bringing that into a space together where we can have those hard conversations and things. Because I'm holding a God portal, like literally a portal to God, to creation. And I've been very just whimsically manipulating people to get what I want through that God portal. I'm like, yeah, I'll share my God portal with you, but this is what I want. And it wasn't sacred, and it wasn't like I wasn't taking care of it. Like it wasn't protected. Um, and which really leads me into the cards that I drew today. This morning, I was out by this pond and doing some practice and some yoga practice. I'm doing my 200-hour yoga teacher training.
Awesome.
And what came up, the 3 cards that came up was protection. First, it was conservation, protection, and then inner child.
Of course.
Okay, yeah. But what those things it was like all about cleaning up the containers that we're playing in, and where are you putting your energy and your time, your money, your energy. Where are you spending all of these things under conservation? And I saw like I'm very primal, and so I like the chase, I like the hunt, and this like where I'm at in my life in relationships with people and things is right now I'm in that conservation mode. Like I'm down close to I'm like, I can feel it. I'm down
Like
close to the
snuggling
ground.
in.
Yes. And I'm hiding behind these bushes and I'm just watching. I'm watching the gazelles do their thing. I'm watching what time they go to the pond and what time they go for a run and what time they go do all of these things and how they interact. And I'm just watching. And I'm like, okay. And then I feel like this humanness comes up, and this human is like, you need it now. You need it now. If you don't go after this right now, it's not going to be here. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit into that for a moment and get a little bit closer to the ground. I can feel like this deep, like coming out of me. While I'm watching. And I'm like, no, now is not the time. And so really it got me into I need to have a conversation with my current partner, like a really difficult conversation of where I'm at and what's going on. And I keep getting what comes up is I don't want to control their availability. Like, I don't want to be like, we're having this conversation right now. It's more so of, hey, I'm ready to have this conversation now. Let me know when you're available.
Mm-hmm.
And respecting that they're not available right now. And then I'm like, I'm going to burn it down and just have the conversation. And like, it's literally coming out of my face. Like, I'm experiencing like breakouts around my mouth because I need to say it. There are things that I need to say. And really what it's showing me is where I'm not holding that space of integrity with myself. And so I was messaging one of my friends. I was like, what do I do now? What do I do? I'm like, they're currently not available. And it's like bursting out of me. And they're like, well, what do you need? How can you take care of yourself? And I'm like, but I love you. Thank you. This is exactly what I need. This is like bubbling out of me. And it goes back to that conservation of like the sitting down into it and conserving that energy and pulling all of that energy back, because that's where I'm giving my power away. And that partner knows it. They know, they can feel that I'm like bubbling on the edge and they're avoiding it.
Not available, not available.
I don't want to do this. This is a lot. This is a lot. And I felt it. I cut my hair the other day, and I felt myself like step into the queen's room is what we've been calling it. It's what I've heard it referred to as. Like, whereas you go in and you set your intentions and you just trust that it's going to show up. That day, I wanted connection. So one of my friends showed up at the studio and I was like, oh, we have a meeting. Come in, let's talk about all the things. And while we're talking and having that moment, this beautiful girl is cutting my hair. And then she's like, okay, now look at the mirror. Do you like this? Do you like that? I'm like, let's adjust it here. Let's do this. And I've never, ever been particular about my hair like that. Like, oh, I don't like this. Please change that. Or I don't like this. Like, this is how I would do it. I've never been super particular like that because I didn't want to hurt their feelings, which is ridiculous. And I realized it's because I wasn't judging the process. There was no mirror in front of us. I wasn't in a salon sitting in front of a mirror being like, I look like a wet cat right now. Like, really, with my double chin. Like, I look like a cat, like a wet cat. And I wasn't judging it. So then I felt super sexy. And I'm like, oh, yes. And she's like, okay, check it. And because at first, what I did was I did like, this comes down and I wear it to the side and it's like very sexy Viking warrior. I love it. But I wasn't going to go all the way up. I was just going to do like a little shaved like keep. And so that way I'd be like, oh, it's cute. And then halfway through it, Spirit was like, do it. And I'm like, God. And so I was like, actually, you know how I decided how I was back and forth and that we just flow with it? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm ready to commit. Just do it. And yeah, it's the most beautiful thing ever. There's no mirror in front of you, so you're not judging the process. And then I was sitting in the cape in the room talking to my friend who's sitting on the massage table, and I was like, this is it. This is the queen's room. I'm just waiting. I'm taking care of myself and I'm enjoying where I'm at. And I'm waiting because the perfect moment to have that conversation will organically come up when they're available. And I don't have to force it and I don't have to burn it all down. And I get to be fully supported in it. And so then it goes back to like that protection, like the conservation of pulling that energy back, that it's no longer a power play in the relationship, in the dynamic. I'm just taking care of myself. And I'm like, oh, you're not available? That's fine. And when time comes, if you're not available to have that conversation, I'm just going to do what I need to do to take care of me. And it gets to be easy and flowy, and I don't have to force it and burn everything down because that's where I was before. And then I realized the game has changed. So that was like the conservation. And then we go into like the protection, and the protection is paying attention to where are you not taking care of yourself? And like that is like protecting your energy. Like we think that protecting ourselves is building these walls and carrying this armor, when really protecting ourselves is pulling all of our energy in. And I love that sitting down into it is coming up, sitting down into it and taking care of our beingness, like our own self. That's the protection. So that way we can create this container and be in relationship with ourself for our inner child to come up and feel safe. And I feel like all of that was coming up because I did this channeling thing on Friday where I went to an event, and Alice and Holly was channeling. And finally we get to the point, like almost everybody is gone and I can feel it like bubbling out of me. And I'm like, fine, I'll go. I'm like, I'm ready. She's like, okay. She's like, yes. And I'm like, I am angry. She's like, okay. And I could see like my most recent past life, I'm a walk-in. So what that means for me is that I was not born into this body. I know the moment that I came into this body and it's like the portal opened up, I came in and this being that was here experienced so much trauma before that it stepped out. We just traded spots.
Love it.
I remember my mom telling the story. She's like, you were just a different kid. And I'm like, yeah, I have no memory. Like people remember being born sometimes. I know that Eliza will come to me and be like, oh, I remember being born. I remember where I was before. Like, I know that she will come to me and that will be her story. And I'm like, I was 3. Like this being was 3. I don't.
And then I was 3.
Yeah. I don't remember anything before that. And so before on that life, I was on a boat and I'm pretty sure I had to be some like pirate or some Viking. It was so sexy. And I was very masculine. I'm pretty sure I was a man because I'm sure at that time you had to be. But I had like this haircut that was really close to this right here. And I feel like it just like integrated. But I was used to a lot of slavery. And slavery, whereas I commanded atoms, ADAMS. I commanded men. They were at my disposal. They were at my service. And I cared for them. The people on my ship, they took care of me. We took care of each other. But they were also slaves. And they were expendable. It didn't matter. There would always be more. And then I come into this life. I think it was like a moment that I was on this boat and I became aware that there's this storm and I've lost so many men to the water. And the boat was falling apart and there's this crazy storm. And then I was in the eye of the storm and I had this clarity that I was the boat and the water and the storm and the being experiencing it. And I created all of this. And then I went, like, it was like this huge wave came over the boat. And right as I did that, I was in this body.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And the game now, since 2012, the game has shifted. So before, it very much was built on that slavery. It was built on control, slavery, manipulation. I can get what I want out of you. You're expendable. And really, that's what our economy, especially in America, that's what everything has been built on so far. Like just layered on top of that. And then something shifted. And now I have this anger radiating out of my body. I'm like, this is not the same. This feels different. I cannot create the same way that I did before. I cannot command these atoms, ATOMS, the way that I did before. It's not showing up the same. And then there are people who want to do that for me, who are like, I'll show up for you. I'll do these things for you. And then I get really angry because I'm like, no, you're not available. This is not how it works. This is not the game anymore. And it's because the game is a little bit softer. And the reason why I came into this life as a feminine being is because I came in to learn the softness that I've been so rigid and so masculine and get things done. And noticing that I come here and it's a little bit softer. And then Allison was like, it's because you're going in and you're commanding and wanting control over these things, but there is no control. It's a dance. And it's that soft feminine, like back and forth, like it's the dance. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that's really like integrated over the last couple days. Like I'm still kind of angry about it.
Be soft. I can be soft.
I'm soft. And then it comes into, Taylar, what do you need to be taking care of yourself so that way you can be soft? Because my inner child needs that safe place, needs that softness, that nurturing. Because I've been so rigid. I grew up in like a very rigid, I can see it like when I look back, I see the way the energy is flowing. It was very much like my mom did this a lot. She's like, this is where we were, this is where we are, this is where we go back to. And it was very like boxy. And I was used to that. And now I'm shifting out of that box. And my inner child is like, I don't fucking trust you. She's sassy, she's bossy, she knows what she wants. And she's like, I don't trust you. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, you have your energy everywhere. You're scattered. There's no container because feminine beings are very fluid. And she's like, you're not even holding this for yourself. And you're not calling in your energy. And I don't trust you. Why would I be on your team? Why would I do these things? I don't trust you. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And like, it just like this anger, my eye
like
twitches.
glitching out.
Yes. Having a glitch in like my matrix over here because it's like shifting. And I'm like, okay, shaking it out. Cool. You don't trust me. Cool. I got it. I don't trust me. I got it. Awesome. Where do I need to start? And then it all went to my mat this morning. And it was like this, taking care of myself and calling in my energy and doing these soft things to protect myself, because yoga builds your strength. It builds your strength, your endurance. It shifts so much personally for me. I have like so many emotional shifts from it because I'm letting this tension out of my body. I'm not carrying it in my body. And so I'm like, oh, you can do this in a soft way. I don't have to walk in here with my like wooden spoon ready to beat somebody because like it's not working out the way that I want. And I'm like, oh. And so I feel like that's what is coming to share with everyone else, is that you don't have to be rigid in your boundaries. You don't have to be rigid as these are my boundaries and I'm not flexible and this is how I want it. It's my way or the highway. It's totally okay to walk in and be like, oh, this is what's important to me. This is what I need. And giving yourself, calling all of your energy back in to give yourself that space. And then which creates like, it's so cute. I was like, it creates the sex room for your inner being. Because that's really what you're doing, is you're creating a container for you to be all that you are.
Yeah.
And even the dark parts of you that maybe you don't even share with everybody else, but you're creating that container for it. And that's what we're all doing. That's what I'm seeing happen collectively, that the element of surprise came up. And isn't that what the media does? Isn't that what our government, what everything does, is they drop it on us and surprise, be like, blah, blah, blah. And it does, it makes all the humans go blah, blah, blah. And used to, like, as in like before this morning, that was the way that I preferred to interact with people that I was manipulating and controlling to get what I wanted, to be safe or whatever.
Like surprise factor.
If I can walk in and surprise you, if I can, you're not available for this conversation, but if I can shove it on you anyways, you'll go and I'll be able to get what I want.
Yeah.
Which hello is exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
It's what happened all whenever COVID was.
Last 2 years.
Yeah, last year, the year before, I don't know. The timelines are weird, but that's what it does. It makes your nervous system shift, and then you're not a safe place, and then you don't trust yourself. So then you're looking outside of yourself for this government being to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
Because of that element of surprise. But when you're taking care of yourself and you're calling your energies back in, and you're moving from that softer, nurturing place. Maybe this isn't for everybody. Maybe this is just, okay, I'm going to trust it's for the people listening, that you're able to manifest and receive what you want. But if you're being very rigid, you're not going to receive. You have to be open to receiving to do that. So yeah.
That was so beautiful and all
you.
channeled clearly, because multiple times I wanted to jump in and then I was like, don't jump in and mess up the channel message. Okay, you took us on a really twisty, turny road, which I adore. The first thing that we talked about was the polyamory thing and the creating for ourselves what we want, not necessarily what society wants, but like what can more love look like in your life. And some of the things we talked about even before we turned on the microphone and the recording was like, what if it just looks different? To your point, like, what if I don't want to have sex with a whole bunch of people, but what if I just want to cuddle? Like, what if I just want to go get coffee with someone? What if I want to do it multiple times? And I reached out yesterday to a previous partner of mine that I feel like we were starting to develop that close relationship, and it could have been a long-term partner for me had Scott and I not chosen to take this relationship in a monogamistic way. But even that, it was interesting as I was kind of peeling back the onion and thinking more into it, because I also asked him to do a podcast with me. And I'm like, what would I want to talk about? Well, I would want to talk about like how we found each other and what our first date was like and all that steamy sexual tension and making out with me in the parking lot. And then what it was like for us to revisit each other. I mean, I wanted a weekly schedule with him, and we were pretty consistent in that. Or at least multiple times a month. And that is a consistent partnership, but it like looked different.
Yeah.
Right. And then we were like, what if we just had a giant cuddle puddle every night and just snuggled with our closest people that we love? Right. And what I think is beautiful is, and throughout your whole story is this theme of we get to create it. It's the sex room in your head, right? It's the container that you decide to live in and to create in this life. It's really beautiful. So I just thought I would go back and circle on that because that seemed interesting to me. And then the other thing that I love that you talked about was the dropping into this life. And I've tried to tell a few people your story. And so now it's recorded. So I can be like, listen to this episode where she talks about, what did you call it? Dropping in?
Walk-in.
A walk-in. Ooh, there's a lot to all of that. So if people are listening and they're like, wow, I feel like I've had a similar experience, or like, how do you remember a past life? I have so many questions for you as well. Like, so much. At this point in your life, as of this morning, and all of the information that you are given, even just this morning, how is it that you have been able to take this like 30,000 foot view of your life and like retrospect it, and then look at it also in the moment and be like, I know why I'm here. I know my purpose. I know how to move forward. Because I think so many of us are just drifting. We're like driftwood. We're just like, I don't know what the fuck to do with my life. And like, I'm just here to hang out. And like, oh, life's so hard. And like all these emotions. But it seems like for you, it's been so easy now that you know your purpose. You can have retrospect, can see even different multiple lifetimes, like what the theme has been that has brought you here. And then for you to be able to be like mature enough consciously to say, I know how it all ties together. I know how I've played my part in it. And that helps me in making decisions as I move forward. How did all of that happen?
I really feel, one, it was something I've always been able to do. Being able to pull up out of it, I'm pretty sure it had something to do with when I came here. I realized that I was a child being raised by children. And I remember this fear. We went and visited my grandparents were there, and then they were leaving, and I'm like, you're leaving us with them.
With them, with the kids.
Yeah.
Your parents.
And my family line is very young anyways. And so I just remember like having that moment. And then throughout my childhood and like teenage years, I just remember being like, we've done this a lot together. And I felt like I just had this knowing. And it's radical acceptance. I get into meditation, somebody visits me, and spirit calls me to go to somebody's house, and I'm like, hey, spirit guided me here in my meditation. I know it sounds crazy, but it's just like doing that over and over and over again with practice. And I feel like it really took, when I got married the first time, it really took that moment that I decided, like, that was the first thing that I did that I didn't give a fuck about anybody's approval. And so it came up that like we hooked up, and then just never stopped, and I never went home, and we were married 6 weeks later. It was thrilling and beautiful and a mirror, and it was the first thing that I didn't turn to the authority figure in my life and be like, should I do this? Should I not do this? What is this? What does this mean? What does this feel like? And then after that, it was like that back and forth of caring, not caring, caring, not caring. And then when we got divorced, I went to esthetician school, and it tied everything together. So how I see things is like layers. And I'm down here in the treatment layer. Like you don't start out when you do skincare, you cleanse, and then you do like 2 or 3 cleanses, and then you exfoliate, and then you put your treatment, your mask on. And I constantly live in the treatment section. And so I'm like 4 or 5 layers deep, and then I realize that not everybody is. So then we have to cleanse and we set the container. Where are we at? What are our intentions? What needs to be seen here? How do we connect? And then it goes a little bit further. And then the exfoliation opens everything up. And I'm like, oh, now we're here. Now we're here in the goodness of it. But I've always been able to see those layers. And so tying it together with the skincare made everything make sense. And then after that, it's just practice. I can go into that space very quickly and very easily because it's just practice and radical acceptance that I just trust that I'm like, yep, I can do that. It is what it is, but it's taken a lot to get there. And then I have all these human emotions in the way. Like I've spent the last 2.5 weeks being angry and so just spitting mad. Like I could spit fire. And it took everything in me. I'm like, I'm gonna channel Kali and I'm just gonna burn it all down. And Spirit was like, no, don't do that. And I'm like, are you sure?
Because I know how to do that.
I'm really good at it.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, breathe and just take care of yourself. Yeah. And so like I've always been able to do that. And I feel like that's the magic that I bring that I didn't even know as a thing, because we forget. Like I feel like I get so practiced in this. I'm like, wait, not everybody does this. Not everybody sees things this way. Not everybody can see the layers of the atoms of how they're laying together, and you can't create space and speak to them. Oh, okay. Good to know.
Well, hold on. I just thought it was really funny the way you were like, breathe. And then like on cue, I breathe. Like you can tell we work together a lot. I see her like every 2 weeks and I'm like, I will take any command you give me. Yes, ma'am. Process things. Oh my God, that's so funny.
And even just yesterday, I was like, people are not direct with me. And I'm angry that people are not direct with me. And one of my friends was like, Taylar, how long has it taken you to be direct with yourself? I'm like, oh yeah, I think this happened within the last 10 minutes. And she's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it did, because I was even wishy-washy back and forth. I was like, hey, I want to go find some water today. Does anybody want to go with me? I really didn't want to go by myself. And then I was back and forth because I was fearing the rejection of if I tell somebody to breathe and they say no, like that's rejection. And I don't experience that. And I don't experience like people just breathe. They trust that, like we just trust. And I trust that if you're actually not available to breathe, that you'll bring it up and we'll talk about it. And we'll talk about why you're not breathing. And we'll hold space for that. But otherwise, breathe. Breathe through it anyways. But we were talking about that, and I was like, I could feel like that back and forthness, because if I was being direct, I would have just told her, I would have just showed up and told her to get in the car and we're gonna go to my grandma's house and she'll feed us and we'll go swimming. It'll be fun. And then I could feel like that fear of rejection. So instead, like I tiptoed around it and I was waiting back and forth and trying to do this like weird little dance. Instead of just standing in it and being like, get your ass in the car. We're going to go have fun. And what time do you need to be home? And
speaking what we want.
Yeah.
Because that's what I wanted. Are we so scared to just ask?
I was like, afraid they were going to say no.
Right. Well, me too. Okay. So this happened yesterday to us multiple times. Okay. So Scott has found this new group of friends to go play like Dungeons and Dragons and other assorted card games. And he went the first night and came home at like midnight and had so much fun. And I went to sleep and I was like, okay. And then he's talking about, hey, I think you're going to meet up again Sunday. And for days, I sat with this uncomfortable feeling that was like, I wish he'd invite me to come. Like, I can play Monopoly. Like, surely I can figure out how to play another card game. And maybe I'm interested. And then, but internally, I'm like, but maybe he doesn't want me there. Maybe he wants this to be his own thing. And so I finally got enough guts, like yesterday morning. And I was like, so babe, I know you might go to that card thing. And I was wondering if maybe you want that to be your own thing or if you would like to have someone come with you. And then we settled on, he was like, no, I'd love for you. Okay. He goes and does not invite me. So I was like, clearly he wanted this to be his own thing.
Yeah.
But that was like one thing yesterday that happened. And then another one, I was telling him, like, I really would love to find a sexy leather outfit. And I've been finding, like, I've been served all these ads on social media, but I don't know, like, is it going to fit right? And leather's expensive. And like, you want to, so he was like, he then steps in for me. Like, I voiced what I wanted, and he was like, do you want to go to Adam and Eve? Do you want to go to Seductions? Like, let's go today. Let's go.
See.
We're going to have some dinner together and have a little date. And then we'll go to the sex stores and we'll see what they have. And I was like, oh, okay. Yes, that's what I want. And it was so awkward going in these sex shops with him. I felt so ridiculous, like a little girl. Like I was like doing something bad. It was so stupid. And I was like, I haven't been in one of these stores since like college. And so we, like we walk through and he's kind of on this mission to like help me find this leather. And then I'm like, oh my God, what if he makes me like try it on in the dressing room? That's not a thing. I don't think in these
I
stores.
don't know. It might be.
I don't know. Anyway, we ended up not really finding anything and having a ridiculously fun time looking through all the sex toys and making fun of the giant wiener things. And I'm like, how does this go anyone? I have no idea what this is what is happening.
Also, we don't want to yuck somebody's yum. That was not a judgment.
No, absolutely. It wasn't. No, I was just like, wow. I felt like I was getting a whole education. And then he was like, have you heard of this or this other thing? And I was like, what? He was like, let's go home and I'll pull it up on the internet. You can learn some new things tonight. So then of course that led to super hot sex. But if we would just get out of our own way and just ask for like the little things, I think that's part of the training that you're talking about. Like listening to what you really want inside, or like listening to the voice and just acting on it, listening and trusting. And the more that we do that, then it becomes easier and easier and easier. And then it's natural. Like you channeling the inner child stuff. I've been with you obviously for 2 or 3 years now, every other week. And I've watched how that's come up and how it felt a little crunchy at first for you. And then watch now, like I get on your table and you come in and you're like, your little girl's here. She's 15 and this is what she wants from you. Like immediately it's dropping in and you're trusting it and you're letting it channel, and it's always perfect. It's always right. It always makes me stop and listen and grow and feel the feelings, even if I don't want to.
I feel like that's what it ultimately comes down to. Is like these things that are getting in the way. It wasn't like, grown Taylar that was having this back and forth. Grown Taylar would have said, get in the fucking car. It was that inner child, that rejection. And what I think that somebody gave me permission to not link everything to my trauma and not overanalyze it. So I'm not even going to go into that story, but what it was, it was linked to a place where I needed something over and over and over and over. And that need was rejected. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't, it was like that the caregivers had this much capacity and I still needed this much. Like I still needed more. And so I'm in this group right now, with Millie Fox, and I like just joined, and we had like a 15-minute call the other day, and by the end of it I'm like crying. It was beautiful. And she's like, what if you gave yourself permission to have everything you wanted? What if you gave yourself, this sounds like a permission issue, like you have to go ask the authority if you can have these things. And like I feel like it came down to the very like rite of passage things that I experienced. And so I'd go through this rite of passage, and then it wasn't what the authority figure in my life wanted it to be. I'm like, they have their own projections, perceptions, like getting a bra is a very rite of passage. And I did that with my grandma, and it was very easy and simple. We were at Walmart, I'm sure, and I was like, oh, I want a bra, I want this. My grandma's like, okay. And then I get home and my mom is just angry. And she's angry because she had this perception that this would be the rite of passage. I mean, it wasn't informed. I didn't know. It wasn't like, hey, Taylar, when you want a bra, like you tell me and we'll go do the things together. maybe it was, I didn't receive that information. It wasn't that kind of thing. I was like, oh, I was just in the moment. Hey, I want this. And I received it. And then I get punished for it. And so like every time that happened over and over is what my inner child is like responding to. So then I had to like create the container, and thankfully I have amazing friendships and relationships. And I was like, I'm telling myself this story. I'm afraid of being who I am and be standing in this with you because I'm afraid of this rejection. And then she totally confirmed. She's like, I totally understand that. And I experienced that as well. And the feelings that you have that I see you having are fucking mutual. Like I'm in this like relationship, but it's like a friendship. She's like, I'm in this too. And this is a safe place. And like that was just a mirror of how we hold how I hold that space for myself a lot of times. And that feeling comes up where like my inner child's like, I want to go do this, I want to go have fun, I want to go do this. And then I have to like process through all of it even still, because sometimes it's hard, it's uncomfortable. The yoga really helps. Moving my body really helps, because then there's no more excuses. Like now I have no other option. I'm like, okay, fine, we'll do it, we'll do this because you want to, we're gonna go do it. But it's really practice and radical acceptance, because kids believe anything. And so I feel like that's the work that I do as an inner child coach. It's the first time I've used that word. As an inner child coach, that's what I do. Is the kids come to me, and I help their grown-ups hold space for them. And I always thought I would do that working with kids. I knew like as a young person, I was like, I'll work with kids. And so I worked in daycares and I went to school for early education. And then I got in the classroom and I was like, this is not it. But at that time, as I was going to school, I'd done like rebirthing meditations with people, where we go in and we recreate where they were born and how that happened and make it a sacred thing. And the doctor, like if there's a doctor present, whoever's present hands that baby to you. Baby you puts baby you on your chest and like helps you build that like heart to heart connection with yourself. Like I was doing things like that and I was like, I want to work with kids. I didn't realize that I would be working with all of the inner children of the adults that come to me. And so I feel like that's what I do. And I felt a lot of my own perfectionism coming up, being like, oh, well, I can't be an inner child coach because I don't have this program together. And I don't have any of this and I don't have any of that. And I know that I could Zoom call and channel your inner child and tell you what you need to hear and help you hold that container for yourself. Because I can see it. That's what I can do.
And you're already doing it.
And I already do it.
Yeah.
And they say that your purpose and what you're quote supposed to be doing in life is something that you're already doing. And this is something
easy for you.
Yeah. And this is something I've been doing for like 15, 20 years because I could see it. And like even looking back in my childhood, like I could see, you know, my dad, I could see him as a little boy, like sitting in this, like it was one Saturday we were cleaning and I could just see him like just like sitting in the corner, like in this chair. Like he just felt awkward and didn't know what to do. But his grown-up him didn't have the energy or the bandwidth. Like his grown-up him had been at work for, 80 hours that week already, or however long it was, and had contributed that how he contributed to Saturday cleaning was different. But then he felt awkward. And I just saw like that little boy, like just sitting there. And it was really interesting to like see that as a kid and be like, okay. And then just go on. Be like, Mom told me to clean. So that's what we're doing. And we're dancing to Prince and like doing things like that. So yeah.
And maybe that's why you felt like the kids within your parents were raising you.
Oh, absolutely. And that's how I feel like even in my own parenting with my daughter, she triggers the crap out of my inner child because my daughter gets everything she needs for the most part, for everything I have bandwidth for. If she calls out, we tend to her needs. There is no crying it out. There is no whatever. And don't get me wrong, I've been the yelling mom in the last 2 weeks because I've had my own shit. And sometimes it takes me a minute to see it because I am also human. And I feel like it's it's easier when it's your stuff going on
Yeah.
and I'm not emotionally attached to it. It makes it different.
Yeah.
But kids trigger that inner child within us, and all of the love that we didn't receive, and all of the ways that we weren't cared for that we needed. Maybe we weren't able to communicate that. Maybe we weren't able to, I didn't have the words to say, hey, I'm an acts of service. So when I clean the kitchen, it's me telling you I love you.
Yeah.
And receiving that acts of, when you do my laundry, that's an acts of service for me, and it makes me feel loved. I didn't know how to say that as a 6-year-old kid, and then doing my own laundry. I remember telling my mom at one point, I'm like, oh, well, my best friend, her mom helps her clean her room. And my mom's like, you're a fucking mess. And she didn't say that, but she was like, you're a mess and you made this mess. I don't want to help you clean up your room. Like, you did this. And to me, it was like her mom was helping her with that service. And that made me feel loved. Like, that was my love language. I didn't know how to communicate that. I didn't know how to ask for that, other than being the whining kid who's not getting their needs met, who now has to go clean their room. And so that triggers like all of our inner child things. And we have to hold space for that. So usually when Eliza goes to bed and at 7 o'clock and it's been a long day, I go in and I cuddle in my bed and I make this little nest, and I hold myself the way that I hold her, because I know what that looks like. And I'm like, oh, this is what I need. So I go and I curl in bed and I hold myself and I'm like, okay. I made these mistakes today and I love you, and this isn't perfect and it's okay. And all of the places that, maybe I yelled at Eliza, or I did whatever, I can apologize to her. These kids are resilient. They're so resilient. You go in and you say, oh, baby, mommy was an angry mama yesterday. I had so much anger pouring out of me and I yelled at you and I'm so sorry. And they're like, oh, okay, thank you. Awesome. And I realized that, like, with my own stuff, like, that if people are like, oh, well, what can I say to make this better? What can I do? And I'm like, I just need a real apology. Like, that is who I was then, and this is who I am now. And if I could go back, I wouldn't do that the same. And I'm sorry that I did it that way. I didn't know any better. That, to a kid, even a grown kid, if you don't have, relationships with your grown children, doing that will change so much. Because it's that validation. It's that, hey, I see this. And what I heard was, my mom said quite a few times, she was like, well, I talked to this person and that person and I justified what I did. So that way, if at any time you came back to me and we have this conversation, I knew that I was right. And I'm like, that doesn't matter. I'm telling you, from my experience in my body, that was not right for me and my experience in my body, the way that I was treated.
So this is you as an adult telling your mom from things that happened in the past.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And like, if that apology, like that one apology, would change everything.
Yeah.
And so it's the same with our own inner child. That when that child shows up and they're hurt and they're angry, or they, whatever kind of feelings they have going on, when people are on my table or we're having a Zoom session, we go in through like that meditative state, and we go in and we apologize to that child. We validate their experience, and we don't go in and be like, well, this is what happened. Like, this is the bigger picture that you couldn't see.
Your memory is wrong.
Right? through your child perspective. You couldn't see all of these other things. So your experience is invalid. We go in and we validate that. And then we apologize to ourselves. And then we apologize that I am so sorry. Like, that every time I did this to you, that I abandoned me, that I didn't listen, that I did these things or didn't do these things. And I apologize for every time I did that. And then we forgive ourselves, like, on that like multi-dimensional level. And I see like just the layers spreading out in the way that it just ripples out into our lives. And then we're like, oh, and then we have that radical acceptance that kids just do. They're like, why is the sky blue? And you're like, oh, because the ocean reflects off of it. And they're like, got it. Cool. Awesome. I accept this information. Or our kids are like gullible. It's because they accept the information.
Of course.
Because
why wouldn't they? Yeah.
Uh, why wouldn't we accept that we are just magical and powerful and can do all of these things?
Can you imagine if most of the adults in the world went through something like this,
Mhm.
like really address the inner child? And I'm sure you can look at adults and look at how they're still expressing their traumatized child
Mhm.
by throwing a tantrum, punching someone, acting
Mhm.
out, like,
Stonewalling, not doing anything.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Ooh, that's a good
Yeah.
one, right? That like silent guy at work
Mhm.
who's like so much inner turmoil because he doesn't know how to process his feelings. Like
Yeah.
there's so much shit going on in all of us. And what I love is that's the human journey. That's
Mhm.
the human experience, which is the name of your company. Like that's
Mhm.
exactly why we're here, is to process through all of that.
Yeah.
Our whole life is to process it and
Mhm.
to heal ourselves. I was on a call yesterday morning with my Course in Miracles group. And the question was, like right now, you feel that you are God
Mhm.
in this class, in this course, in this moment, you feel super connected. Like we'd read the text, we talked about the text, and then we, and then she was like, but when you go out into the world, when you go into work, when you go see your husband, when you see your, like, that falls away. What is that for you? What happens when that falls away for you? And some people were like, well, I just don't feel worthy. And some other person was like, well, I just, I don't feel like I'm enough. Like there's all these little triggers. And what I found interesting was like, nothing was coming up. And I just kept seeing myself, and even this podcast, like, because I've worked through it and I've worked through it and I'm still working through it. Every time I get on your table, there's something else that comes up, but it's taking the time and energy to do the work that then allows you to be a beacon, to be shiny, to have enough guts to show up on a podcast like this for thousands and hundreds of thousands of people to listen to talk about that. It doesn't have to be that way.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like we get to the other side where we're in our lives and we can actually affect change and allow us to step into something that's more, maybe like our reason for being here is not to just process all the child shit that we did. That's
Yeah.
part of the journey.
It is part of the journey.
And there's more.
There is always more. There's always another layer. And what I saw a couple things. The first thing that I saw was that it's because we've created containers outside of ourselves. So my partnership was set, like we have a set of agreements and it's this baseline, and it wasn't set on where I'm at now, like with transparency and honesty and like bravery and authenticity. Like it wasn't set on any of that. We were, we met in 8th grade. We were 15, 16-year-old kids. It was set on codependency, manipulation, getting what we need, and lying about who we are to create this facade of perfection to protect ourselves. And that's what it was built on. So then you walk into, I go home and walk into that container, and then I'm like, oh, I'm not worthy. I'm not any of these things. How is it I go to work and I feel like God, meeting God?
Yeah.
And it's different here. And it's because we've placed that container outside of ourselves. I was like, oh, okay, well, we're 15 years old and 16 years old, so we're going to make this container, and we're safe as long as it's like you and me in this container, and this is how it looks and this is how it goes. And we've gone in and like readjusted things, but it was still playing the same damn game until I get to the point where I'm like, literally, we stopped, we separated in April, and I do this thing where I walk through the portal and then I walk back. I walk through, I'm like, got it all. I'm seeing it all. Awesome. I experiment with it. I play a little bit. And then I'm like, but I need to double check.
Yeah.
And
Hold on,
so
let me take a step
I
back.
take a step back and I walk back through the portal. And then things are great, and things have shifted. And I'm like, I wonder how long it'll be before like I'm ready to walk back through it. And like literally not a month later. Like it's like a moon cycle later. I was like, oh, I see it. I see it now, and I can't unsee what I saw.
Yep.
And now I have no choice. And now I'm angry because I have no choice, and it's all an illusion that I don't have a choice. And so like shifting and just going back through little, because and creating the container for me. And I feel like it went back to our conversation a couple weeks ago where it's like, I'm my partner. I'm the primary partner.
You're your primary partner.
Yeah. where I feel like I've definitely like tried to partner with. I partnered with my mom, and then I partnered with this boy, and then I partnered
Me
with this
too.
other boy, and then I
Mhm.
partnered with my mom again, even though I was partners with this boy, and then like it just goes on and on and on. Where I partnered
Mhm.
outside of myself, but I feel like that's the difference when we partner with ourselves and we create that container. Then there is no unworthiness.
Mhm.
There is no not enoughness because this is the container we're in. We have, I mean, we may have the stories, but the container doesn't fall away. We don't stop being God because we have these stories. We're like, oh, huh, I'm aware I have this story going on. Are you available to give me perspective? Is this what's happening here? And then you share whether it is or whether it's not or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool, thank you. And then you go about doing your thing. But we also do that with ourselves. It's important to check in with ourselves too, where we're like, oh wow, little Taylar, I see you have this perfectionist story that if it's not perfect, then then you'll get in trouble. And if you learn along the way and you experiment and mess it up, which is how you do things, it's how it works so beautifully for you. If you do that and you are yourself, then you'll get in trouble. And that's like generationally,
Mm.
women like were burned at the stake for following our intuition. So of course it's a box of that, a
Mhm.
box of that. And now we're stepping out of that because the game is not the same. Because nobody's gonna burn us for following our intuition.
Mm.
It doesn't work that way anymore. I'm untouchable.
So tell your inner child that,
Uh-huh.
Sue. This is really, really beautiful. Thank you for coming on,
Thank you.
coming back to my house, having these conversations,
Thank you for
helping us
inviting me.
heal. Absolutely.
I will send you a link to put in the description that if anybody's feeling really called, that it needs reconnected to their inner child, I'm available for that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I will send you a link to put in your description.
Okay.
That way, if anybody needs that support or wants a channeled session, where we sit down and we do some channeling about what is coming up in your life and where the inner child is speaking and pointing out to you, saying, "Hey, here I am." I want to do that.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't wait for more people to experience it. I know it's really made a difference in my life, helped me process through things so quickly. I've walked out of sessions with you and been like, okay, on to the next thing. What's next?
I feel like anytime anybody's like, "Oh, it's the inner child stuff," it makes me think like one time you were like, "Ah, it always comes back to this, doesn't it?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was probably our second or third inner
Right.
child session in. I was
Yeah.
like, fuck. Why does it keep coming up?
But that was the layers thing. So we go through this experience and we comfort our inner child. And then we have like another experience. And it's all about like calming the nervous system as well, because that's where the inner child lives. And so it totally is like you go through like this, the bubble pops and you have this new awareness of your experience and you're in a whole new
down
level.
into it.
And then you sit down into it and you calm your nervous system again and you reconnect to your inner child and you're like, this changed. It's like moving as a kid. And it's like we have a month until we move. We're gonna move, we're gonna pack our things, we're gonna do these things. So it's the same. I'm sitting down into it with my inner child and I'm saying, we're transitioning right now and we don't know what it looks like. And we're gonna create it together and we'll be okay. And then it gets a little bit closer. Or even like kids need that time, the time change, like where it's like, hey, you have 10 minutes till bedtime.
Totally.
I need that. But really, it's like, hey, you have 10 minutes, so you have to go to work. Or you have 10 minutes, so you have to get ready to go to work. Or 10 minutes, so you have to get ready to go to work.
Yeah.
It's the same. And so you walk yourself through that process as well. Oh, I realize I'm in a transition. Sit down into it, hold space with that inner child. Tell them what you know is going on, even if you're like, I don't fucking know what's going on. Wait, I got you. We're in this together. And like shifting through that. And it always comes back to that because if you are moving through this experience with awareness, that's always happening. You get to the top of the layer again and you go, and the new cell pops and grows and changes and shifts. And
Part of our human experience.
it is.
All right. We're going to turn off the recording. We'll see you guys later. Bye.